Hi, you guys. This would usually be our story video, but this week, the verse that came up in our following through of the Gospel of Luke had a different significance for me, and so I wanted to share something of my own story that has directly been impacted by this Bible verse this week. And so, the Bible verse is taken from Luke chapter 8. And it's just a few little verses from verse 19 to 21, and it says this. Now Jesus' mother and brothers, they came to see him, but they weren't able to get near him because of the crowd. So someone told him, your mother and your brothers are standing outside and they want to see you. And he replied, my mother and my brothers are those who hear God's word and put it into practice. It's almost like we're not very comfortable with it because it feels like he's disowning his mother and his brothers in favour of the people that he's hanging around with, his mates, I suppose. But I'm not sure that's really what's going on here. And I just want to tell you a bit about this story. So I think it was Saturday night, maybe, I had a dream. And I don't have dreams very often. And I don't have words from God very often. But just occasionally, I feel that God talks to me in a way that I can't get away from. I know that Lorna and I have had this conversation before because it was one of those moments that was when I rang Lorna and I prayed with her, I prayed for her, and she then has this miraculous story about what happened next. But I'll let her tell you that. But just every so often I have these God moments when God really speaks in an amazing way. And this dream that I had on Saturday was one of those. And so I had this dream, and it was about my school friend who I haven't seen, even really talked to. I mean, yeah, we're on Facebook, but that's Facebook, in about 20 years. And I had this dream about this friend, and I dreamt that I had gone to see her, and she lives down in kind of south central, as it were, a long way. And I dreamt that I went to see her, and she told me that her dad had died, and I was devastated. I was really devastated. And I woke up and it was about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I just had this feeling of devastation about the fact that her dad had died. Now, to explain a little bit more about who she was, Amanda was the person who took me to church for the first time, really. She was in my class at school. Her mum was a Christian and was a member of the local church, and her dad was not a Christian, but kind of went along with mum, as moral support, still does, I think. But they became quite important people in my life when I was in a family that wasn't very stable, and there was me and my brother and my mum, and lots of things that were going on there that were just unstable, unpleasant, difficult to deal with when you're a 13, 14-year-old girl. And they helped, and I'm not saying they were perfect. There were times when they had expectations of my mom that just weren't helpful, but they cared for me, and they kind of adopted me, and they loved me the best that they know how. And I'm sure that we can think of us, think of times when people outside of our family unit have done that. They've adopted us, and they've looked after us, and they've given us what we've needed when our blood family, has not been able to do that, or people that have nurtured us in our lives. And they were that family. And they took me to church, and they paid for me to go on a youth camp when I was 14, which is where I became a Christian. It's where I made the decision to become a believer, and which is not a decision I've ever regretted for the rest of my life. And that was 23, 24 years ago. And so this is the family that we're dealing with. And so I had this dream, and I just I felt really disturbed. And it's 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was like, don't be silly, Kia, just go back to sleep. So I went back to sleep. And the next morning I woke up and it was still with me. But I didn't really think anything of it. And then it stayed with me for another 24 hours. And then the next day I was like, I can't get over this dream. There's just something about this dream that isn't going away, and maybe if I text my friend. So I text my friend and I said, "Hi, this is going to sound completely bonkers, but I had this dream that I came to visit you and that your dad had died and I was devastated." And she messaged me back and she said, "Kia, I think that may have been a God dream because we have just found out that Dad has cancer." And I thought, okay, whoa, that's a big deal. And I realised how much I cared for them. And I cared for them because they were these people that were here in Luke. And he replied, "My mother and my brothers are those who hear God's word and put it into practice." And that's what they'd done. They had lived God's word for me. Even Alan, who didn't believe in Jesus, as it were, who didn't profess Christian faith, nonetheless, the things that Jesus says, he did in his life. And so they were really important to me. And for some reason, God has seen fit to reveal something to me about what's going on with them. And I sat on the bed, having just received this text message from my friend saying that her dad was really ill. And I said, "Lord, why have you shown me this? And why have you given me this information?" And the Bible was lying open on the bed at that passage because I'd been looking at preparing for this story, saying, "Well, he is your mother and your brothers. And I wanted you to know, and you still have a role here." And you know what? I rang my friend the next day, and we had a glorious hour and 20 minutes on the phone, and it was just really, really lovely. And I realised how much I cared and how much I loved them. And I think the challenge is not to cast off our family, our blood relatives, in favour of others, but to love others like we love our blood relatives, and to take the cost of that, and to take the pain of that along with the blessing of that. And that's been my God experience this week. So I wanted to share that with you because that's where we're at. So the next time you've got difficulty in your life or there's something going on, say, right, how can I be the mother and the brothers in this? How can I love this person like they were my brother or sister, or like they were my parent? And go from there. And God does the rest. And it's always worth it. Thanks, guys.